Okay, in this Sidewinder tutorial I simply want to discuss moving IP points and pulleys with the mouse input. Essentially I'm going to go ahead and just open an example file that I have here that I made up and go into the geometry window. Now you can select elements down here in the graphics in the profile output simply by clicking on various places on the conveyor. And you can see that when I select them, the corresponding element up above is highlighted. Also, you may or may not have known if you right click and go down to move point, you actually get this little IP cursor here, and I can click on any IP point and actually move it around, which is kind of slick. It's very useful when you've got a ground profile overlaid here. So again, I'd simply right click and go to move point, and I can move a point around. As sort of a shortcut, if you actually left click and hold on a point, if you hold it for a second, it will change to that IP icon. So that's the same as right clicking and selecting move point. You can just simply left click and hold on a point and it switches to that. One thing I want to mention here is you see, for example, this 500 meter radius. If I make this too extreme, so that 500 meter radius no longer fits, it simply sets that radius back to 0 because it wouldn't fit. I've moved my IP point too far. Like always in Sidewinders, if you screw up your profile or whatnot, you can always just click the undo button and that will undo. So again, if I left click and hold, you can see I move this IP point around. If I make the radius too big, that radius disappears. Likewise, this radius over here, if I make that too extreme, that essentially sets back to 0. So that's the only thing to be careful about. I mean, you could come up with a warning that gets sort of annoying when you're trying to move points around. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. So I actually just, if you exceed the radius when you're moving points around, it simply sets them to 0, and you need to go in and re-enter what's going to be your new lay radius. For example, in this radius here, now we could say fit 1,000 meters in it. But just to show you this, if I went over here and I moved this, say, to here, well, now you can see it's only going to fit 175 meters. So that's the only thing to be careful with. Again, I can simply click undo, and it undoes all my changes. So that's IP points. If we left click and hold, so we've said if we left click and hold on an element, we can move it. If we actually aren't on an element, we can zoom in. That's the way you guys are probably used to using it right now. That's been the default in Sidewinder up to this point. So if I left click in an open area and drag my cursor, it changes to this little crosshair, and I can zoom in, which is quite convenient. Double left clicking just zooms out or resets the view. So again, left click and hold, I can zoom in. Now with pulleys, this is something that's new. We can now move pulleys. I'm going to even zoom in a little bit farther here. Zoom into here, move this around a little bit. I can again right click and say move point and select a pulley. For example, I could select this pulley right here and move this around. Again, rather than right clicking, I can actually left click and hold right at that point and move that pulley around. Now there's two options. We can either select the incoming point on the pulley or the exiting point on the pulley. And again, these will do two different things. If I select the incoming point and hold, I move just essentially see that highlighted flight. But let's say I wanted to move this pulley but none of the other flights or none of the other pulleys. I can actually click on the exiting point, and now I can move just that pulley, both the incoming and exiting elements, and not change anything. So that's very convenient. Like I say, if I click and hold on the incoming element, I can move all of them. If I just click on the exiting element, I just move that pulley. And again, if you get screwed up, you can just keep clicking undo. If you make a mistake or whatnot, you can always use that undo button. And this goes for any and all pulleys. I can move that one. If I just wanted to move the pulley itself, I could click on it there. Or maybe I wanted to move this take-up pulley forward. Well, in that case, I'd click at the exit point and move it forward. Or if I wanted to move the whole unit, click and hold, move it back. So hopefully you find that useful. I think you will. And as always, give us your feedback.